My husband hid spy cameras in our home and posted my private moments online, like I was nothing but a sideshow. I kicked him out and slammed the door on 10 years of misery. I thought that was the end. But 3 years later, he's back, stalking me, whispering apologies from a distance, pretending like the scars he left were just misunderstandings. Even during our first week together, I should have known. He wasn't just unkind, he was calculated, cruel, and the most exhausting man I've ever met. One time he hacked into my email and canceled an interview for the dream job I had spent years working toward. When I called my mom, shaking, heartbroken, she didn't gasp or get angry. She just said, "Okay, but did you thank him for what he did?" In our family, arranged marriages are sacred. Divorce? Unthinkable. You could get away with almost anything as a husband, as long as you didn't leave. That gave Robert power. Terrifying power. He never touched the trash. That was a woman's job. I wasn't allowed to wear clothes he didn't pick, or listen to music he hadn't approved. I tolerated it, not because I was weak, but because I was trained to expect nothing more. But the worst part, the part that made me lose sleep, wasn't the chores or the rules. Every weekend he flew to Arizona to do drugs with his friends. He insisted he wasn't addicted. But when I checked our bank account and saw he'd drained half of my savings, I didn't even cry. I didn't scream. I just sat there, frozen. Because deep down, I knew if I told anyone, they wouldn't ask what he'd done, they'd ask what I did to deserve it. For years, I lived like a ghost in my own skin, haunted by threatening debt collectors, Robert's unpredictable rage, and the gnawing emptiness of watching my future vanish one missed payment at a time. His drug withdrawals made him irritable, sometimes violent. I'd flinch at slammed doors, duck from flying remotes, and still, I stayed, not out of love, out of fear, out of culture. Then, one day my grandmother came to visit, the only person in my family who ever saw me. On her mantel sat a delicate gold necklace my grandfather had given her during the Soviet War. It was priceless, not just in money, but in memory. And suddenly, it was gone. "Honey, have you seen Grandma's necklace?" I asked Robert, trying not to sound accusing. He smirked. "You could say that." Before I could even respond, my grandmother stormed down the stairs, fury in her eyes. "You idiot! Where is it?" His shoulders slumped. "I misplaced it." But I knew the truth. He sold it. For more drugs. And before I could shield her from it, Grandma slapped him. Full force. "My family gave you a wife, a home, and you repay us like this?" He mumbled something and walked out the door. I watched him leave, and for the first time in a decade, I let myself smile. Not because the necklace was found, but because I knew, finally, it was over. 10 years of torment, and I was ready to take my life back. The divorce process was long and brutal. Each document signed felt like peeling off layers of skin I didn't know were still attached. Robert, of course, never made it easy. He would send flowers I was allergic to, drop off milk chocolate even though I was lactose intolerant, and ring my doorbell at midnight just to say he missed me. It was all so performative, like a child throwing tantrums at a locked door. His family? Worse, they bombarded mine with furious phone calls, accusing me of shaming them, dragging their son's name through the mud. But for the first time, my family stood by me. Even my mother, who once believed a bad marriage was better than no marriage, remained silent when Robert's mother accused me of abandoning my duties. That silence was more support than I had ever dared to hope for. It was in those first few weeks of freedom that I began to live again. I wore my hair down for the first time in years, let my curls fall freely past my shoulders. I started dressing in clothes that made me feel beautiful, not invisible. I had even begun smiling at strangers, rediscovering the simple act of being seen. But all of that crumbled the night I found the camera. I had just changed into my silky pink pajama set when something blinked red in the corner of my vision. The digital alarm clock on my nightstand, one Robert had gifted me during our last anniversary, had a tiny light, one that hadn't been there before. My stomach dropped. I remembered a TikTok video I'd seen a few days earlier, 5 ways to spot a hidden camera. I didn't hesitate. I picked up the clock and smashed it against the floor with a scream I didn't know I'd been holding back. The plastic shattered, and there it was, nestled within the wreckage like a spider in a nest, a miniature camera. I didn't think. I just threw it out the window, grabbed a pillow, and curled into the corner of my room, sobbing until my chest physically hurt. He had been watching me. Every single day. For how long? Weeks? Months? Since before the divorce? My breath came in short gasps. The bathroom. The bedroom. Every time I'd danced alone. Every time I'd cried, unguarded. Every private moment that was never private at all. I didn't sleep that night. Every sound made me flinch. Every flicker of light was a threat. The shadows moved, and I saw him in all of them. The next morning I went outside and found the broken clock. I picked up the pieces and carefully placed them in a shoebox, shoving it in the back of my closet. I didn't know what to do with it yet, but something told me I'd need it. I told no one, not even my grandmother. The next week was a blur of fear and paranoia. I changed every password, email, banking, streaming, even the passcode on my apartment door. I downloaded a new antivirus, ran every scan 3 times, and covered my laptop's webcam with a piece of tape. I tore through my apartment like a detective in a thriller, checking behind wall hangings, inside electrical outlets, beneath furniture, even unscrewing air vents. I found nothing else, but the absence of evidence only made it worse. If he had hidden one camera, who's to say there weren't more? I stopped using Wi-Fi altogether. I paid cash for everything. I deleted every social media account, wiped my cloud storage, and deactivated my online presence like I was going off the grid. I even bought a prepaid burner phone and ditched my main device. I told myself it was precaution. Truthfully, I felt like prey. And then it got worse. A few mornings later, I stepped out for my usual walk. The air was still, the street quiet. But 2 blocks down, half concealed under the shade of a maple tree, was his car. The black BMW. The same one Robert had proudly bought instead of paying our overdue electricity bill. Seeing it there, shiny, smug, and utterly out of place, stopped me cold. My lungs locked. He was here, watching. This time, I didn't run. I stormed across the pavement and knocked on the window. He rolled it down slowly, wearing that fake, casual smile, the kind people wear when they're pretending everything's normal. "What are you doing here?" I asked, my voice tight with fury. "Just checking in," he said lightly, as if we were old friends catching up over coffee. "I found the camera." He blinked, just for a second, then the smirk returned. "Camera? Oh, that thing you broke? You're being paranoid. Who's to say you didn't put it there to frame me?" Classic Robert. Deflect, deny, gaslight. It was always the same script. I didn't give him the satisfaction of arguing. I just turned and walked away. But I could feel his stare burning into the back of my neck. That night I took my laptop to a friend who works in cybersecurity. I explained the strange behavior I'd been noticing, files opening on their own, my cursor drifting when I wasn't touching the mouse. After a deep scan, he looked up from the screen, his expression grim. "There's a remote access Trojan installed," he said. "Someone's had full control, webcam, keyboard, everything." I didn't need to ask how it got there. Robert had been in my home after the divorce. I'd let him back in, let him cry, let him bring flowers like that, and fix anything. I'd stood next to him in the kitchen, thinking maybe closure was possible. He had been watching me even then. I wiped the laptop completely, changed every setting, every account. Still, I felt exposed, like my own walls were conspiring against me. The next day, I got a message request on Instagram from Robert's brother Russell. We'd never been close. He once told me women were too emotional to be managers. His first message was mild. "Hey, just checking in, hope you're well." I didn't respond. A second message came. "The family misses you, you should come by sometime." Still, I said nothing. Then the third, "You embarrassed the wrong family. Some things can't be undone." I blocked him instantly. That night, someone egged my windows. Shells stuck to the glass like little white flags of war. I didn't call the police. What could I say? That I suspected my ex and his family were harassing me with eggs and creepy messages? They hadn't technically touched me, not yet. So I cleaned the mess myself, installed a budget security camera above my front door. My hands were shaking the entire time. The next morning, I opened the jewelry box my grandmother gave me, the one that held her earrings, the ones she passed down to me on my 16th birthday. It was empty. Not broken, not stolen, just cleaned out. I'd asked Robert for his spare key back months ago. He said he'd lost it. I called the locksmith with trembling fingers. That night, I slept with a kitchen knife under my pillow, eyes darting at every sound. My anxiety had evolved into something else, something cold and constant. I wasn't just spiraling, I was being hunted. And then, it got unbearable. I stumbled onto a private forum link someone had anonymously posted in a community thread. There were photos of me, changing clothes, laughing, sleeping in my own bed, taken inside my home. The world stopped. The screen went blurry as bile rose in my throat. Someone had been watching, not just once, for weeks, for months. They had seen everything. This wasn't paranoia, it was real. And it was just beginning. Hundreds of strangers commenting, captions calling me exotic, spicy, prime. My scream broke something in me. I threw up. Then, curled on the floor in a fetal position. He hadn't just watched me, he had shared me. I had been violated beyond words, and the world saw me and called it content. That night, I drove to my grandmother's and told her everything. The camera, the footage, the eggs, the forum. She didn't cry. She didn't gasp. She packed me a bag, handed me cash, and said, "You need to disappear for a while. Don't worry about us. I'll handle everything." I left the next morning. Burner phone in hand, no GPS, no digital footprint. I wasn't just running anymore. I was preparing for war. After enduring years of manipulation and surveillance, I realized it was time to reclaim my life. The discovery of the hidden cameras was the final straw, igniting a fire within me to take control. I meticulously planned my next steps. Determined to gather irrefutable evidence of Robert's violations, I began by revisiting our old shared spaces, searching for any remnants of his intrusive behavior. In the back of a closet tucked away in a box labeled miscellaneous, I found several USB drives. My hands trembled as I plugged them into my laptop, revealing a trove of videos and documents. There were hours of footage from the hidden cameras, detailed logs of my daily activities, and even personal notes analyzing my behavior. The extent of his obsession was both horrifying and validating. With this damning evidence in hand, I decided to confront the situation head-on. I discovered that Robert had recently become engaged to a woman named Emily. I reached out to her anonymously, sending her the files along with a letter detailing my experiences. I hoped that by exposing his true nature, I could prevent her from falling into the same trap. The response was swift. Emily called off the engagement and filed a restraining order against Robert. The fallout was immense, and Robert's carefully constructed facade began to crumble. He attempted to contact me, leaving voicemails filled with rage and desperation. One night he showed up at my grandmother's house, intoxicated and shouting obscenities. We called the police, and he was arrested for trespassing and harassment. In the aftermath, I felt a profound sense of liberation. By standing up to Robert and exposing his actions, I reclaimed my autonomy and ensured he could no longer harm me or others. The journey was harrowing, but it led me to a place of strength and resilience I never knew I possessed. The security guards called the police, but they just gave him a warning and sent him home in a taxi. No arrests, no consequences, just another reminder that the justice system often takes a backseat to privilege and performance. And Robert, he knew how to perform. The next week, I received an official-looking letter from a debt collection agency claiming I owed over $30,000, 0 cents. I stared at it, my stomach sinking. The paperwork had my signature, but I'd never signed anything like this. That sick feeling in my chest, the one I'd almost gotten used to, returned in full force. I knew immediately what had happened. He'd done this. He'd opened credit lines in my name years ago, probably during those long weekends I thought he was just out partying. Turns out, he'd been funding his addiction with my identity. I showed the documents to my grandmother, who didn't even hesitate. She called a lawyer that same day. Teresa, a powerhouse in a navy blue blazer with a voice that could silence a courtroom. She specialized in identity theft and domestic abuse cases, and she took one look at my case and said, "We're going to take him down. Properly." We started gathering everything: bank statements, credit reports, emails, text logs, every shred of evidence that showed what he'd done. Weeks passed in a blur of affidavits, interviews, and sworn declarations. But then, Teresa uncovered something unexpected. My grandmother's necklace, the one we thought had been pawned in desperation, it had been sold on an underground marketplace. The seller's account matched Robert's email pattern. The IP address? His parents' home. With that final piece, we filed for a restraining order. The judge signed it immediately. Robert was to stay at least 500 feet away from me and my grandmother at all times. But we didn't stop there. We sued. Identity theft, stolen property, emotional distress. We threw everything we could at him. On the day of the hearing, he walked in wearing a cheap suit with the tag still dangling from the sleeve. His hair slicked back, his grin wide. He tried to charm the judge like it was a bad rom-com. Tried to paint himself as the misunderstood husband. Still in love, still hopeful. And then Teresa presented the evidence. Hidden camera footage, GPS trackers, forged documents, photos of the necklace listing complete with timestamps and IP addresses. The courtroom fell silent. His mother sobbed quietly in the back. And Kayla, his ex-fiancée, was there too, sitting beside me. After I sent her everything, she left him. She hadn't looked back. Now she stared at him like he was a stranger. The judge didn't waste time. Permanent restraining order, full financial compensation, and a formal referral to the district attorney for criminal charges. We walked out of that courtroom lighter than we'd entered. Robert tried to talk to me in the parking lot. A court officer stepped between us before he got too close. He just stood there, shoulders sagging, as I walked away. A few days later, I got a voicemail from a number I didn't recognize. It was him. He was crying, begging, apologizing, promising that he'd changed, that he was still in love with me, that he would do anything to fix this. I didn't call him back. Instead, I wrote him a letter. You could have had peace. Instead, you chose war and lost. I mailed it to his parents' house, deleted every fake social media account I'd used as decoys, and started the long, slow process of legally reclaiming my name. Then came therapy. My first session with Dr. Patel, a gentle woman with calm eyes and the kind of presence that makes you feel like maybe, just maybe, you're not broken. I told her I wanted to reclaim my life. I needed help processing everything. She nodded, said, "You're already doing the hardest part, surviving. Now, we'll work on living." The sun felt warmer when I left her office that day. My curls bounced freely again, no longer hidden in knots or tight buns to avoid notice. For the first time in years, I felt like me. But the story didn't end there. About a week after that first session, I found a letter in my mailbox with no return address. It was a photo, me walking into Dr. Patel's office, taken from across the street. No words, just the image. My body went cold. He was still watching me. I called Teresa, then my grandmother. I packed a bag and moved back into her home that night. I didn't argue. At 3 a.m. my phone buzzed. An email. "You think you've won? This is just beginning." I didn't sleep. Just sat at the kitchen table, surrounded by coffee cups until my grandmother found me. She looked at me and said one sentence. "We're installing a security system. The best money can buy." Within days we had cameras, motion sensors, alarms wired straight to the police. I started documenting everything, every car, every knock at the door, every email. Teresa called it building a case. I called it surviving. Then things escalated. Someone broke into my parents' house. Nothing stolen, just all the photos of me arranged neatly on their bed. Every frame empty, just the photos, laid out like a message. The police shrugged it off. Teresa didn't. She got the restraining order extended to include my entire family. A week later, we found a package on my grandmother's doorstep. Inside, the necklace, broken in half, delivered by hand, caught on camera. That night, I broke. Panic attack like a tidal wave. I couldn't breathe. Dr. Patel talked me down over the phone. "Start journaling," she said. "Write it all." So I did. Every memory, every fear, every flicker of hope. I brought the journal to therapy, read it aloud. It hurt, but it healed. 3 weeks later, we had him. Police reviewed footage, issued a warrant. Found him sleeping in his car a few blocks away. Binoculars, camera, my schedule printed out. He was arrested on the spot. 2 days later, he made bail. That's when I told my grandmother we had to leave. Colorado, her sister, a fresh start. She agreed. "I'll sleep when we're safe." We left at 3:30 a.m., driving west. Hours of highway and quiet crying. When we pulled into her sister's driveway, the mountains greeted us like guardians. In Colorado, I rebuilt. A job at a bookstore. A new therapist named Lane. EMDR sessions. Pottery classes. Hikes. Coffee with a new friend named Jesse. I started dating. Frank, gentle, kind, patient. I told him everything eventually. He stayed. 3 months in, Teresa emailed me. Robert had violated bail, removed the ankle monitor, crossed state lines, arrested in Nebraska. 6 months in, he was sentenced. 3 years in prison. 3 years of freedom. I printed that email and taped it to my mirror. Every day it reminded me, you are safe, you are free. The fear didn't vanish overnight, but it softened. I started hiking alone again, sat in a clearing one morning and wrote, "I am not afraid today." 1 year later, my grandmother and I bought a house, a garden for her, a reading nook for me. I applied to grad school. I laughed more. 2 years later, Teresa called. Robert was up for parole. He didn't get it. That night we celebrated. Pasta, wine, laughter. I looked around the table, at my grandmother, my aunt, Frank, and saw everything I'd fought to protect. Not just safety, but joy. And I knew the truth. I am not the same woman he tried to break. I'm not just surviving anymore. I'm living. And that is the best revenge of all. If this story spoke to you, if you've ever felt trapped, silenced, or underestimated, then I hope you walk away today with one powerful reminder. You are not broken. You are rebuilding. Please like this video if it resonated with your heart. Subscribe to the channel for more real, raw, and unfiltered stories that remind us we're never alone in our pain or our healing. And I would truly love to hear from you. Drop a comment below and let us know. Have you ever reclaimed your joy after walking through darkness? Your voice could be the spark of courage someone else desperately needs. And remember, no matter how lost you may feel right now, there is always a way back to yourself. Because the best revenge is reclaiming your joy.